as hardcore professionals, almost regarded as nerds that only talk technical jargon and a lot of hard stuff. But we're also humans. We are of different genders, of different ages, of different ethnicities. And DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee projects that side of the society, that projects the soft side of the society through the numerous programs they put together on behalf of the society. The last of which had to do with mental health when the celebrity shrink was hosted. Without further ado, I'm very happy to introduce the anchor for today's event in the person of Jibola Taiwo, that is with Stanbic IBTC Capital, works in the energy and infrastructure finance area. Jibola, over to you.
Thank you very much, Yemi. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Jibola Taiwo, and I'll be moderating this session. I have with me today our guest speaker, Dr. Okechukwu Okere, Vice President, Africa Region at Hofstede Insights. And we'll be talking about driving performance through diversity, equity, and inclusion. We'll start off with a presentation by Oke, and then move on to questions and answers. And I'll hand over to Rita, the DI committee chair, to round off the session. So please feel free, as we go through this session, please feel free to post your questions and comments in the chat box. Okay, at this point, I'll be handing over to you for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jibola. I just want to confirm if everybody can see my slides. Are you able to see my slides? Great, great. It's such an honor to be here with CFA Nigeria. And of course, it is a pleasure for us indeed to make this presentation. Let me start with this saying by the founder of our organization, Hofstede, as his name is pronounced in Dutch. Good luck trying to pronounce that name if you want, Hofstede. He said that the survival of mankind will depend to a large extent on the ability of people who think differently to act together. This saying is at the heart of what we do in Hofstede Insights, and it also points to the heart of our discussions today. When you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, you're talking about people who come from different walks of life, different backgrounds. How do you get them to come together as a team and work together? I'm not going to bore you with details about myself. Of course, the slides will be available for you so you can see a bit more about me. And in terms of our organization as well, we've been on since 1985, and we've been working on this interesting construct called culture. Culture is our key focus, and we look at organizational culture, we look at intercultural management and diversity, equity, and inclusion analysis, and we do a lot of research and training to support. If you have the time, please feel free to download our app to get more about our models and get to know more about culture and understanding culture. So I'm going to roll quickly into an exercise, and the team is going to help us to do something. I would like you to bring out your pen and your notepad. You're going to make some notes, and then you're going to answer a quick poll. You're going to respond to a quick poll for us. So are we ready? I'll do a quick countdown in my head, and then we will go. If you're ready, maybe you want to give us a thumbs up where you are. Give us a reaction, a thumbs up on the screen. Let's know that you're ready for this quick exercise. Anybody? Okay. And here we go. Think of a great CEO in Nigeria. Think of a great CEO in Nigeria. Anybody that comes to your mind, a great CEO. Who's a great CEO? Don't tell us yet. Don't type anything in the chat box, please. I forgot to mention that. Don't type in the chat box. Just keep that image in your head for now. Who's a great CEO in Nigeria? Think of one person. I'm talking about a real human being, not a fictional person. So a real person, as in this person actually exists. So please don't type in yeah, alive, dead or alive. Yes, dead or alive, provided you they were not like in in the 60s or something, that you basically were alive around the same time. So a real human being, again, the CEO of another organization, not you and not your CEO. So your CEO, I know your CEO is great. And if you're here and you're a CEO, I know you're also a great CEO, but I'm not talking about you and I'm not talking about your CEO, right? Somebody else, another organization. So write that person's name down. The first person that comes to your mind, write their name down on a piece of paper. Don't show anyone. Don't show anyone, just write it down, write that person's name down on a piece of paper, right? And when you're ready, do let me know if you're ready. You see, I said don't type the name in the chat box. Somebody already types something that I will not read so that I don't bias the audience. I said write the name down on a piece of paper, on a piece of paper, on a piece of paper. And are we ready? I'm going to ask you now to take our poll, and they will share the poll. I want you to describe the person that you've written down. Who did you write down? Describe the person. So our poll will open now. Yes, our poll will open now. Describe this person that you wrote their name down. The person you identified as a great CEO. Describe them. Describe them. So let's see, we have 86 participants on the call. And so far, okay, let's see, how many responses do we have so far? 32. Great. Let's keep it coming. Let's keep it coming. Describe the person that you wrote down. Describe the person you wrote down. Don't put it in the chat box, please. Don't put it in the chat box. Please select in the poll. We have 33 responses so far. We need more. Perhaps if we can get to maybe 50%, then that would be good. Or maybe even 60%. Interesting, the results so far. Quite interesting to see. Great CEO. Describe that person, their gender, their age, as of today. How old are they as of today? And where did they come from? Perhaps if we could give one more minute so that we can see. If you're just joining us, we're asking you to identify a great CEO in Nigeria. They don't have to be Nigerian, but they work in Nigeria. Identify that person and describe that person. So you can just make a note of who that person is and describe that person in the poll. So we have 48% response rate so far. We have 51%. So if we could close the poll in 1 minute, and we can just see the results of our poll. So the polls will close in 1 minute. Interesting. Interesting. And I would say we'll close the poll in 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's close the polls. Let's take a look at the result as is. What do we have? The average responses, from the average responses, we have 80% indicating that the great CEO they know in Nigeria is a man, male. So 80% and 20%, I said that the CEO is a woman, a female. In terms of the age range of the CEO, the great CEOs, about 22% of the people that have responded have said that the great CEO, a great Nigerian CEO that they know is between the ages of 50 and 54. And it's interesting to see that almost an equal number of people have indicated that the great CEO is around between 40 and 44. Quite interesting to see that. But if you look at the numbers, you would see that if you add 50 to 54, 55 to 59, 60 to 64, together, they make up the bulk of the numbers here. Interesting. And where do they come from? Where does a great CEO in Nigeria come from? The Southwest, 41%, Southeast, 22%, South, 22%. Wow. Why are we doing this exercise? Well, we'll tell you why we're doing this exercise. In our research that we did on Nigeria, the leading companies in Nigeria, we found out that the statistical average in terms of the CEOs in Nigeria, the average CEO in Nigeria is male. Not surprising with our results over here. It's male. How old are they? 54.6 years old. And basically, it corresponds with what we have just said over here. And then, where are they from? From Southwest Nigeria. Not too surprising, actually, because Southwest Nigeria, of course, is the economic powerhouse of Nigeria. Lagos, of course, being the center of that. Quite similar to what you see in the US, where the average Forbes 500 CEO is a 58-year-old white male. Why are we doing this exercise? Well, we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's very clear to see from the outset that in all societies, it is common to see some particular group of people in a particular society dominating economic or political spheres. Our research that we'll be talking about today, and when we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're going to limit our discussions to corporate Nigeria, right? And for us, it's important to say why there should be diversity and the business case for it as well. But what is diversity, you might ask? Well, diversity for us in plain terms is a reflection of our differences. So we accept that there will be differences in our workplace, in any given setting. There'll be differences. So diversity basically is we have an environment that allows people who are different from us, who come from a different ethnic group, a different gender, a different age range, a different educational background, to be part of our organization. That is diversity. And then there's equity. Equity is the acceptance of individual uniqueness. People are different, and therefore, the way you would treat people in an organization to ensure equity has to be different. There are certain individuals that have particular needs. Those needs should be accommodated within the confines of the organization. Lastly, inclusion is about a sense of belonging, Not only am I a part of the organization, but I am made to feel like I'm a part of the organization. One way to look at it, as people describe it, is a party. A party means diversity in terms of the party is you've been invited to attend the party. That is diversity. And we're inviting people who are different from us even to attend the party. That is diversity. Inclusion, from the sense of a party, is you are being asked to dance in the party. So somebody walks up to you and says, hey, would you want to join in to dance? And then equity is, we're going to play the kind of music that you like to dance to. So we'll not only play one style of music, we will try and accommodate various tastes in the party. That's one way to look at diversity from that broad sense, right? Good. So let's look at diversity, equity, and inclusion in Nigeria. To what extent is this prevalent in our great country? Well, I don't know if you're aware, but Nigeria happens to be the world's third most ethnically diverse nation. The world's third most ethnically diverse nation. The top 10 most ethnically diverse nations in the world are in Africa. And anthropologists, of course, will tell you that there are thousands of ethnic groups in Africa. Without going into too much of a discourse, in the past, people have looked at ethnicity from the point of race. But recently, scientists have shown that when you're talking about ethnicity, it goes beyond race. So in terms of being ethnically and culturally diverse, Nigeria is the third most ethnically diverse nation in the world, based on the Gorin score. But in corporate Nigeria, the level of diversity is significantly low. So we did a study to look at the level of diversity, equity, and inclusion in Nigerian organizations. And we examined 154 of the leading organizations in Nigeria, companies on the stock exchange, and some other unquoted large companies. We looked at the level of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our analysis basically looked at two levels. We looked at the board of directors, and the management teams. And we basically focused on 4 key parameters: gender diversity, age diversity, ethnic diversity, and educational backgrounds. In terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, there are many parameters. And I would say as well, carefully, that some of the parameters accepted internationally for diversity, equity, and inclusion are not permissible in Nigeria. Things like sexual orientation, for instance. So we did not look at all of those parameters necessarily. And we also followed the methodology that was accepted by other international studies. And we basically focused on these 4. Looked at boards of directors and management teams. Now, 2021, 2022, we've done the study. And what did we see? The level of diversity based on our analysis on a score on a range of 0 to 100, unfortunately, corporate Nigeria does not meet the pass mark. Last year, our previous study, 45 over 100. Our most recent study, 2022, 43 over 100. And where are we having challenges as a country? Well, we're having challenges particularly in age diversity. So we're seeing older people in the workplace, in the boards of directors, and in the executive teams. And ethnic diversity, unfortunately, seems to be still a raging issue in Nigeria. We scored 10 in 2021, and in 2022, 8 over 25. So if you understand this, and just to say a bit clearer, each of the parameters that we have over here, you would have to score them over 25 points, and then you add the 25, all of them together to get 43 or 45, as the case might be. Let's dive a bit more into this. The companies, how did they perform? In 2021, 52 companies passed the diversity test, and that was about 35%. It's a 35% pass rate in Nigeria. In 2022, only 48 companies out of 154 passed the diversity test. So the failure rate is higher. When we look at the top companies, the companies leading on the diversity, equity, and inclusion scale, the top 10 companies, you would see them shown on the screen. And if you will observe carefully, I know that there are many people from other industries here, but I know that CFA, typically most of your members are in the financial services space. You will notice that only one financial institution is among the 10. Well, you might say Africa Prudential is a financial institution as well, but they're more of a data and records company now from what we understand. So only 4 companies in 2022 had an excellent score, got an A in our assessment. I'll show that again. Only 4 companies got an A in 2022. In 2021, 5 companies had an A, at least 70 points. And what about industries? Financial institutions, how are you performing on diversity, equity, and inclusion? From 2021 to 2022, the performance has dipped. And you see again, when we look at these organizations from an industry perspective, surprisingly, energy, oil and gas, chemicals and plastics, industries that are typically male-dominated, seem to do better than the other industries on our scale. Some more data for you. What did we find? We found that boards of directors seem to be more diverse than management teams, and that is not a surprise, actually. The simple reason and simple explanation for that is it's relatively easier to appoint someone to the board to balance your ethnic diversity or your gender diversity. So you tend to see a lot of boards now appointing women to the boards or people from another ethnic group to balance it out. It's easier to do that than to have a woman, for instance, rise through the ranks in the organization to become an MD or executive director or a general manager. And of course, the inadvertent discrimination starts even from recruitment. Some organizations do not recruit enough women into positions. They don't recruit people who are different from them, because oftentimes when they circulate their advertisements for recruitment, it goes around a particular circle. Let's dig a bit into gender diversity. How many female CEOs did we have out of the 154 companies that we examined? Only 16 out of 154. 154 companies, 16 female CEOs. This is as of 2022. Some more data. 33 of these companies that we examined had no female board members. 41 companies had no female executive team members, no female managers. 17 companies had no women either on the board or on the executive teams. Needless to say, we did not find a company that did not have at least one man on their board or executive team. So all companies had men, but some companies had no women. Have we made some improvement? Yes. Last year, or previous year, 22% of leadership, boards and management teams were made up of women. 2022, 25%, but that is still way below the target. The recommended target from the United Nations is 40%. 40% representation of leadership by women. Now let's talk about age diversity. So in our analysis as a company, we have various parameters for assessing the societal culture. And one of those parameters is what we call power distance. Nigeria happens to be a high power distance society. In high power distance societies, people who are wealthy, people who have political power, I want to say political power, people like your boss in the office has political power. Of course, if you go to a house of worship, the church, or a mosque, the imam or the pastor has political power. In the family setting or any other setting generally, older people are ascribed power by virtue of their age. So you tend to see that there's some discrimination towards younger people attaining leadership positions. And of course, if you remember our case in Nigeria, even in the political sphere, there was this furore about people being too young to run. Well, that phenomenon seems to be showing up as well in corporate Nigeria. Take a look at the distribution of the age range of boards versus executives. What do you see? In terms of the executives, you tend to see that the average executive, of course, you see the 49-year-olds, but most of our executives are above 50. Most of our executives are above 50. You have few executives, very few executives below 40. Very few, only 6% of executives are below the age of 40. And interestingly as well, some interesting findings. The youngest board member we found was 33 years old. And the youngest executive we found, the other middle manager, was 32 years old. Or senior manager, so the youngest executive, senior manager, 32 years old. But we did find a 92-year-old board member and a 79-year-old senior manager, executive. All right. So age, indeed, we need to get younger people in leadership positions in corporate Nigeria. And what about ethnic diversity? Ethnicity is still a very touchy subject in Nigeria, and we are quite reminded, unfortunately, about some of the incidents that happened in the recent elections. But ethnicity is something that we need to take a closer look at. In terms of the distribution by the geopolitical zones of Nigeria, you can see right on the screen. Corporate Nigeria is dominated by people from the Southwest. And we're not making judgments, we're just basically presenting data. And of course, the case for more inclusion is required, especially when you look at 3 zones contributing only 11%. They contributed 4% the year before, but over in the next year, it came up to 11%. And then lastly, educational diversity. So educational diversity, the whole idea basically is when you have people who come from different disciplines, most likely the quality of your decisions will improve. And what do we see? Majority of our leadership are from the business, management, and finance backgrounds. And not surprising as well, because most directors and most senior managers have an MBA. So we do see some scientists and engineers, that's STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. And we do have some people from the liberal arts and pure arts as well represented in leadership. So how does diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, how does it affect your business performance? How does it drive your business performance? Well, diverse teams tend to outperform their homogeneous pairs. And the simple reason for that is the more diverse you are as an organization, the better the quality of your decisions, especially when your leadership is diverse. When your organization is diverse, fantastic, but importantly as well, your leadership should be diverse. Diverse teams tend to provide better product designs and service delivery as well, and even the design of their products and services. And diversity tends to be a unique differentiating factor. Some of the data that I will show you, sorry, apologies, running very quickly. Some of the data I will show you, as you can see, diverse teams. If a team is diverse, there is no middle ground, so to say. They would either perform very well or they'll be highly ineffective. But single culture teams or monocultural or homogeneous teams, they would have just an average level of performance. The more diverse you are, the better your performance will be in the long run. Homogeneous teams, if you're from the same background ethnically, same gender, or from the same educational background or the same age range, or all of these parameters combined, you probably will hit the ground running quicker than a diverse team. But over time, your performance will peak. And a well-managed, please, the code word there is a well-managed diverse team will outperform you. And the reason, of course, like I've said, is various perspectives. Some more data for you to see. Businesses that have a healthy balance of men and women in their executive teams are 21% more likely to outperform their competitors. They're also 27% more likely to have superior value creation. When you have a business that has a good mix of ethnic backgrounds, they have a 33% chance of outperforming their competitors. And then when you combine gender diversity and ethnic diversity, then you see that your organization will be 87% more likely to make better decisions. I'm going to give you a practical example. I'm going to give you a practical example. Yeah? Practical example. Did you know that until very recently, female drivers are 73% more likely to be injured in a car crash? Did you know that? 73% more likely to be injured in a car crash. And not only that, pregnant women had a much, much higher risk of injury. Can anybody tell me why this is? Why? You can type in your chat box. Why? 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 Vulnerable, women are vulnerable. MacBook said why? The cars are designed for men, yes. But why? Why? Panic more? Oh dear, panic more. Emotional? Tense? Okay. Women will always want to protect, okay. Women will always want to protect others. The car designs don't support their unique characteristics, reader. Designed by men, Lola. May out of fear, cars are designed for men, no pregnant employees. Sitting position of the car, designers are more men. Exactly, you got that right. Why? Crash test dummies are male. Up until 2011, the crash test, what you see on the left-hand side, the American male, the average American male, who is about 5'9", just a bit taller than I am, and about 100 kilograms. The 5'9", 5'10", crash test dummies. The crash test dummies were male. The car engineers were male. So they designed the cars for men. And men, of course, driving cars because the cars were designed for them, and the dummies that they used in testing response safety were also designed after like men. They basically had a situation where they were blindsided to the fact that women could also drive and that women could get injured. So the way the seatbelt is positioned, not quite suited for the woman. The way the steering wheel and the airbags were positioned, not quite suited for women. Therefore, women were more likely to suffer injury on account of the fact that men were the designers. No surprise, it was a female engineer that discovered the error. A female engineer in Sweden, working for a company called Volvo, that discovered this error. And now they've started making female crash test dummies to test cars and make them safer for women. This is a clear example of how not having gender diversity can affect the quality of your product and inadvertently affect your sales. Because what we would hear is that somebody else who has taken the time to make their team more diverse will be able to design a much better product than your company. That's not all. Another story for you. AI and big data, up until recently, even till now, AI and big data has been discriminating against women and people from minorities. And the simple reason, programming bias, lack of diversity. 85% of developers, of AI developers are male, and less than 4% of them are of Black African descent. So what does that mean? If a Black person tries to scan their face on some apps, up until recently, the apps will not recognize them, or it will take it a longer time to recognize somebody of color on account of the fact that when they were designing these apps and designing AI, all of these things were not put into practice. Again, you can see the direct implication for you as a business to ensure that your teams, not just your design teams, your design team, your finance team is diverse. So diversity will give you a huge advantage over your peers. Only 4% of the firms globally are sufficiently diverse. And this, of course, can create a unique advantage for you as an organization. And it's a safe bet to invest in diverse firms. Simple reason is they will design better products. Their products will not offend. Their products will not offend. As you can imagine, I mean, look at religious diversity, for instance. In a country like Nigeria, there are certain things that you should not advertise alongside your product, so that you don't want a situation where people of a particular religion or a particular ethnic group will shun your products. So diversity really, really helps in terms of product design, in terms of creating products that won't offend a segment of the society you're targeting. It will help you capture a bigger market share, because when you have diverse teams working with you, they will be thinking about how do we translate this product into our context. And of course, at the end of it, it will give you higher returns. So in short, diverse teams will give you a wider perspective. It will enable better decisions, and it will also give you better results as a company. This is the business case for diversity. This is how diversity drives performance as an organization. Diversity opens your mind to the fact that not all of us speak English, not all of us speak Yoruba or Igbo or Hausa, that there are actually 500 languages in Nigeria. I don't know if you know, 524 languages, unique languages in Nigeria, 524. And there are 377 ethnic groups in Nigeria. Diversity will help you know about Jukuns and about Kamukes and about Birongs. And that not everybody in Nigeria is Igbo, Hausa, or Yoruba. There are 377 different ethnic groups. Diversity will give you that wider perspective of how you can begin to improve your products and stop shunning areas of the market. It will improve your decisions and it will give you better results. In our analysis as well, we found some correlations, significant correlations between ethnic diversity and what we call an easygoing culture. An easygoing culture is a culture that will make you more innovative, more creative, and to produce less burnout in an organization. An easygoing culture is a culture that would enable different kinds of people to find their own style of working and fit into the organization. If you have a more ethnically diverse organization, based on our analysis, the more ethnically diverse an organization is, the more likely they would have an easygoing culture that will promote innovation, promote creativity, and reduce the level of burnout and stress in the organization. And not just that, we also found, and this of course will be of interest to CFA members, return on assets. There's a direct link in our study in Nigeria, and you can see the companies in Nigeria. We've drawn the line of best fit over there. There are studies of companies in Nigeria. Significant correlation between ethnic diversity, again, and return on assets. Significant correlation between ethnic diversity and return on assets. Right? Ethnically diverse firms are more likely to have a higher return on assets than firms that are homogeneous. So the business case is there for you. This is, for me, I think this is a strong case for ensuring that your leadership and your staff are diverse. Now, how do you drive performance through the diversity, equity, and inclusion? Well, we're going to recommend to you how you can use your organizational culture to drive performance and to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion and performance. Now, we have a model that measures the culture of an organization on 6 dimensions. And you can see these 6 dimensions on the screen. I'm not going to go into too much detail because of time. Please feel free to download the app I mentioned. You can just check on your phone, Hofstede Insights on your phone, either your iOS app or your Android app, and you will be able to get the app to see more about these dimensions. But dimension 1 looks at effectiveness. Dimension 2 looks at customer centricity. Dimension 3 looks at your style of working, easygoing or strict. And that's the one that we found a direct correlation with ethnic diversity. The more easygoing you are as an organization, the more the more ethnically diverse you are, the more easygoing you tend to be. Focus, which basically defines professionalism. Approachability, which looks at the flow of information in an organization. Do you have an open system or the closed system? The name of the app is Hofstede Insights, and I'm just going to type it in the chat box. So please, you can download it, and it can help you to see more about this. And then the last one is management philosophy. How do you treat your employees? Each of these dimensions have a connection to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And of course, they have a connection as well to your organizational performance. 3 of these dimensions, the odd number dimensions, help you differentiate between different units in your organization. They will help you to identify what will make each unit, each department unique. So dimensions 1, 3, and 5 will differentiate finance from operations or from sales. But dimensions 4, 2, 4, and 6, the even number dimensions, will be what we call your organizational DNA. And those dimensions, dimensions 2, 4, and 6, will separate your organization from other organizations, will make your organization unique. So 2, 4, and 6 makes your organization unique, will make your organization unique, and 1, 3, and 5 will make each department unique so that each department can support the strategy of the organization and the organization can grow. And how do we do this? We first of all start by contextualizing the organization. What are your goals? What are the departments you have? What do you want from each department? How is each department supposed to contribute towards performance? We go ahead and we measure your culture using a 25-minute survey, which everybody in the organization will participate in. And we sit with the leadership, first of all, to look at your strategy and determine what we call your target culture, your optimal culture. And then we look at the gaps between your optimal culture and your current culture. And then we begin to do strategies to help you to change. We recommend to you ways in which you can change your culture and improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then, of course, we can now help you to start your change plan. Specifically, when you look at those 6 dimensions, 2 quick ways that you can improve diversity, equity, and inclusion. If you make your culture more goal-oriented, if you have a goal-oriented culture, if you can push for goal orientation, people should be more goal-driven. And you have a more open system where you allow people to speak freely in the organization, it will improve the level of diversity that you have in the organization. Diversity will be improved if you can improve goal orientation and if you can improve the level of openness. Furthermore, another way to change it, if you want to improve the level of diversity in your organization, you need to have what we call a more professional organization. And a more professional organization is an organization that seeks best standards, best practices, a learning organization that learns from its mistakes, that also accepts people that are different from each other. When you have that kind of organization and you have an easygoing culture, if you push to have an easygoing culture, you would have a more diverse organization. I see some text about talking a bit more about these dimensions. Yes, indeed, I'm happy to explain a bit more about them in terms of the how to push diversity. If you want to push diversity in your organization, you need to be more goal-oriented. And what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you should throw away process completely, but it means that as an organization, focus on your outcomes. Focus on your outcomes and be less stringent on how those outcomes have been achieved. This doesn't mean that you're going to throw away your process. It simply means that process should not be an excuse for not achieving our goals. When you are more goal-driven as an organization, and indeed there are various things to do to become more goal-driven, and we will be able to help with more information about that. Again, because of time, I'm not going to go into that in detail. But if you're all goal-focused as an organization, you will care less about where someone comes from, provided that person is going to help you achieve the goals. You will care less about what gender that person is, provided that person will help you achieve your goals. So that's number one. The other one we talk about is to have an easygoing culture. Easygoing, versus being strict. Easygoing means that you need to create a system that allows people with different needs to still participate in the workplace. You know, one of the interesting things about COVID-19 was that when COVID-19 happened, a lot of women were able to find their way back into the workforce. And the simple reason was that COVID-19 allowed people to work from home. There were organizations that refused to work from home, even though they had the ability and the capacity to work from home, but they refused to work from home. And the simple reason was that they felt we needed to see people in the office. Some people might not be able to come to the office all the time, and their work they can do 100% from home. An easygoing culture, dimension 3, will allow you to have that. When you have an easygoing culture, it will make it a lot easier for people from different backgrounds, from different locations even, to participate in your company. And we talk about focus, which is professionalism. The more professional you are as an organization, and professionalism here means we allow people on the basis of merit, not on the basis of loyalty to a particular boss. On the basis of merit, we give you employment. We're also willing to learn from our mistakes as a professional organization. We're a learning organization. And we also encourage people to criticize the status quo. And of course, in doing all of this, we will be chasing diversity. Because if we're all alike, we will not even realize that we're working within the framework of the status quo. The more professional you are as an organization, the more diverse you will become, and the better your performance will be. Last but not the least, dimension 5, you should allow open communication in your organization. Be more open and more approachable. The leadership of the organization should be reachable, approachable. The information flow in the organization as well should be open. Not too open, perhaps, but open enough for people to get enough information to do their work, and that people don't feel like they're not being included in discussions. When you have an open system that allows for free flow of information, you will be able to increase the level of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and your performance will improve as well. So that is back to this. So what do I recommend? What do we recommend for you in terms of next steps? What do you do? The first thing is capacity. Was it Einstein that said you cannot solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it? You need to get to enhance your capacity. Get people trained in terms of culture, organizational culture, intercultural management, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. You need internal experts. It's nice to get consultants, but I assure you, the best way to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion in your organization is to get experts internally. Get people trained so that they can be able to assist you. They would have the framework, they will have the understanding, they will have the context of the organization to make this happen. And of course, we have tools that we can help with. And these experts, internal experts, can use these tools to measure the level of diversity in your organization. And of course, as part of their as part of building that internal capacity, those internal experts will be able to recommend specific action steps to take in terms of things like recruitment, in terms of your recruitment policies, in terms of your work hours, in terms of other issues that would relate to your organization as well, that will either be promoting diversity or hindering diversity. Those experts that are your staff will be able to tell you, oh, based on what we have learned, we need to change this, we need to change this so that we can be more diverse. The second thing that we recommend is to have a yearly scan. And this should be done by your internal resources. Your team should go ahead and do an assessment. Use an independent tool like the one that we provide to do an assessment of the level of diversity, equity, and inclusion that you have, and also the kind of culture that you have, so that you can see if you're making improvements or whether you need some more attention. And you can now expand that training as well to others in the organization. Everybody needs to have diversity and sensitivity training, intercultural sensitivity training, so that you know what offends and be careful to manage that. And as well, in terms of the kind of culture we want to bring in the organization, it's important to train people as well, so that they can be able to represent the right kind of culture in the organization. Last but not the least, perhaps even the most important, is leadership behavior. No change will happen in any organization without the leadership being front and center. The leadership, their behavior, needs to align with the targets you have as an organization in terms of your culture transformation and in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. If the leaders are not front and center for this, no change will happen. And diversity, equity, and inclusion, culture transformation would only be lip service. So those are the recommendations that we have. Let me just use this opportunity to thank those guys who helped put the reports together. You're going to get this slide, these slides. I want you to get these slides. Please feel free to click on this when you see download the report, the full report here, and you can have access to the full report. If you would like the scores of your own company, do let us know. We can send you the scores of your company as well. Please permit me to also inform you in terms of trainings. We do have trainings coming up across Africa. In Nigeria, it will be in September, but if you can't wait till then, join us in South Africa, in Kenya, or in Ghana for our certification courses on culture. And you'll be dealing with not only culture, but diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. I want to thank you all so much for the opportunity to speak. I'll be happy now to answer questions.
Great. Thank you so much for this presentation. Okay, it was very insightful. Lots of great nuggets from it. I was taking notes as you were going along. But just to mention a few points that stood out to me, with regards to your studies, when you talked about the fact that you showed the fact that there were more, it seemed like there was a slight decrease in companies that passed the DEI last year compared to this year. And that also was reflected in the financial sector as well between the 2 years. The fact that you mentioned, there's been a slight increase in female representation in corporate leadership, at the board and management level. We're not quite where we need to be yet, but, there's a slight increase. We're seeing some improvement there. You mentioned the fact that we need younger people in leadership positions. Typically, we see the older people in those positions. So we need to get younger people in leadership positions. One thing I particularly liked was when you had talked about, the impact of DEI on organizations, wider perspective, better decisions, better results, improves the quality of products. So yeah, lots of information, lots of food for thought in here. Thanks for that. Like you had said, we'll get right into the questions and answers now. And I'll start off with questions from my end, and then we will take questions from the chat box. Just a reminder to everyone online, please put your questions in the chat box so we can address them as well. Okay, so all right, let's get right into the questions then. I'll start with the last point one of the last points you had mentioned, actually, the fact that leadership needs to align DEI targets. And they need to be front and center of this. Totally agree with that. And my question is, as a means to drive participation and inclusivity within their organizations, how can leaders make their employees more comfortable to voice their opinions and to show up at work as their true, authentic self?
Thanks, Ibola. So how can leaders, could you say that again? How can leaders make employees more comfortable and to voice out their opinions at work?
So in the drive to improve participation and inclusivity, how can leaders make their employees more comfortable to show up at work as their true, authentic self and to voice their opinions openly?
So let me first of all talk about it from the perspective of our model, and then I will also give some practical steps that leaders can take. So from the perspective of our model, if you have an organization that is significantly goal-oriented, goal-driven, people will be they will tend to be much more explicit in their communication. And the simple reason is we need to achieve this goal. I'm not going to beat around the bush to make sure that this happens, because I'm being judged, I'm being assessed on the basis of my performance and on what I'm delivering to the organization. So that's one. And then importantly as well is dimension 4, which we call focus. You want to create what we call a learning organization, where you encourage people to question the status quo. Right? You have ways in which you tell people, look, I don't want yes men or yes women, you want to say, around me. I want you to be able to say to me, look, this is not working. Can we do it better? You don't have to be rude to be outspoken. There are two different things. You can be outspoken without being rude, and you can be rude without being outspoken. So, but being able to speak out is a culture that we call a professional culture that does not penalize people for speaking their mind. In fact, we promote people who are outspoken. So what should leaders do? Leaders, first of all, should communicate directly to their employees. If you have ideas, speak out. If you think that things are not working the way they should be, speak out. And of course, speak out respectfully. But if you don't speak out, then I would assume that you're not seeing anything as being wrong. Plus, I'm going to start celebrating, promoting, rewarding people that speak out. People who particularly will give us ideas on how we can improve what we're doing. You know, there is a risk here. The risk is you could have a situation where people just speak out for speaking out's sake, if I would say that. How you would balance that is to say, look, yes, I hear you about speaking out, but what are the recommendations you are bringing? Don't just come and tell me that this is not working. How can we make it better? How can we make it better? Don't just say this is not working. How can we make it better? And you reward people for that, right? If they bring a new idea, you test it. You can have like they call them labs now, or research departments or whatever. You test it out. Maybe a new way of billing our clients, a new way of appraising our staff, a new way of a new layout in our office, maybe a lactating room for nursing mothers, or a creche in the organization. And somebody can say, you know what, we have this room downstairs that nobody is using. We can do it up like a nursery, put kids over there, and we can do it in such a way that it will not even cost us anything. Or the mothers will be able to pay for it and they will pay cheaper than whatever they are paying right now. So there are ways that in which you can celebrate that. When people bring out those ideas, reward them for it. Just to continue on that way, in that frame, the simple way to get people to begin to do something differently than what they've been doing before is to reward what you want them to do. So if I reward consistently, people will understand immediately that this is what I want. So if we're talking about ethnic diversity, for instance, we're going to tell our HR, we need more people from these parts of Nigeria in our organization, right? Go to the national dailies or wherever, go and recruit people who are not like us. Let's have more of them here. Let's have more women in our organization. One of our clients, what they did was that they went all the way to university to start giving scholarships to female engineering students. It's an oil and gas company, one of our clients, female engineering students. And they assured them that they would have first choice when it came to employment, provided they met the minimum criteria. Graduate with a 2-2, and then when we start picking engineers, we will start with you. And of course, they were able to achieve that in terms of gender balance in their organization. Right? So those are some steps. I don't know, you want me to say more? There are many, many things to do, but those are some quick ways that you can improve diversity.
Thanks a lot. Okay, that was helpful. From what I hear you say, leaders should encourage their employees to speak up. actually test out what the recommendations from the employees and then reward them accordingly. Obviously, if it does work, if it pans out, then reward them for speaking up. So thanks, that is very helpful. Now, from an individual point of view, if for an individual that's working in an organization that inclusivity is not implemented and they feel stifled, what would you encourage such an individual to do?
Thanks again, Jibola. Very interesting question. You have to weigh your options. You have to weigh your options. You know, we have to be realistic here. It's hard to get a good job in Nigeria. It's hard to get a good job. So if you have a good job that pays you, do you want to protest? Do you want to leave? Perhaps not. Weigh your options. Try and see if you can be, as they say, you want to be the change you want to see, and try and see if you can leave that in whatever sphere that you have the ability to. So if you are a department head, for instance, is it possible that you could directly influence hiring so that you can hire people who are not like you? Are there things you can do as a department head to make your team members feel more included or inclusive in the organization? Those are things that you can do. If you're down, way down the totem pole, you're a fresh graduate, of course, you do have options. Are there ways that you can begin to creatively draw the attention of the organization to this fact that we need to be more diverse and more inclusive? In fact, one of the reasons why we are doing, as an organization, why we do this research every year, is that we want to turn corporate Nigeria's eyes to this fact. We tend to neglect diversity, equity, and inclusion as a country generally. And we're hoping that our reports, our research will draw some attention to it. So perhaps you want to send a copy of this report to your boss and say, I can't see our company in the top 10. Is there a way we can improve? I mean, you have to find creative ways. And I'm saying this because I'm not saying you should leave the organization. Of course, in the Western world where you have 3% unemployment, you can decide to leave the organization and you can say, I left the organization because they were not diverse and inclusive. And instantly, the organization will begin to adjust. Say that in Nigeria and you're practically on your own. People will be like, please, can I have your job? You have a job and you're saying they're not inclusive. So I would say you have to look at the realistic way of dealing with it. Of course, if there's harassment or discrimination openly in the organization, you need to make a hard choice in terms of what you want to do. Do you want to live? Do you want to blow the whistle? Do you want to write about it? And we are also in what they call the glass door era. Practically everything we do nowadays ends up on social media. And perhaps those of us who are CFA members, I know that you are relatively senior in the organization. You have to be careful about the Gen Zs and millennials because they will tweet about the fact that you are discriminatory or you are not giving enough opportunities to people who are not like you. So those are things that we should be mindful of.
Understood. Thank you very much for that. Okay. We talked about the benefits, the positive impact that DEI has on organizations and teams. And we've talked about how to go about implementing it within your organization. What challenges does a more diverse team or workplace introduce? And how can these challenges be addressed?
So good question again. Thanks for all these amazing questions. Indeed, and I think if I will just quickly go to one of the slides, there is a slide that actually mentions it in terms of diversity. The problem with problem in quotes, with building a diverse team is that, as you can see here, you either do well and do well, very well, or you're going to bomb completely as a diverse team. You end up killing each other, or you end up working for each other. There's no midpoint, so to say, with diverse teams. Of course, this is statistical. Different companies, you could still have diverse teams that perform averagely. What's the problem that diverse teams have? This norming stage, storming and norming, as they say. When you bring diverse people together, differences immediately show. They immediately show. And the issue is, how do you manage those differences? Because if you don't manage them well, the team will end up being ineffective. Differences, ethnic differences will rise up. People will feel that they're being segregated or being discriminated or not being given the opportunities or not being respected. That could pop up. You could have diversity of views. People will not be able to see things in the same light because they come from different cultural backgrounds. So those things can create challenges for the organization. So essentially, if you have a diverse team, be careful. Again, we say that too much diversity could be a problem. Too much diversity could be a problem because you will struggle to find common ground. Right? Too much diversity could be a problem. And I'm using my words very, very carefully. When you have diversity, you have to manage it effectively. And how do you do this? Like we said, ensure that you have people in your organization that have received professional training on diversity, equity, and inclusion, on organizational culture, reframing and design. And if you do this, you would have the internal capacity to manage your diverse team very well. Otherwise, they would fight against each other and chop each other's heads off before your work starts. Jibola?
Thanks. Okay, what I hear you say is too much diversity could actually be detrimental as well. So you have to get the balance right in an organization. Great. I think I'll skip over now to the questions in chat group because we have a few that have come in. Start with I think the first and the third one seem to be quite similar. It says, one of it says, I see the exclusion of disability again. Why? And then the third one is thanks for an insightful evidence-based webinar. I've recently begun researching persons with disability in the workplace, in the wider context of EDI in Nigeria's commercial banks, right? Okay, I'll take that again. I've recently begun researching persons with disability in the workplace in the wider context of EDI in Nigeria's commercial banks. I find disability an often forgotten or least mentioned EDI data metric. I see that here today. Why?
So thank you very much for that question. Indeed, disability is one of the important metrics for assessing diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why did we exclude disability from our study? Two reasons. First of all, we were following a methodology that is commonly used across various countries. That methodology looks at 4 of the important parameters. So that's number 1. Number 2, still on that methodology. Why did that methodology focus on those 4? Because we were looking at boards of directors and management teams. Now, we cannot begin to ask a board, the board of directors or the management team, why is it that somebody who isn't, you don't have people who have people with disabilities in your management team or your board? We can't ask that question. That will be, in other words, are we saying that, we should specifically have somebody in our management team? Before we can say that we're ready, we must go and look for somebody who's physically disabled or who's living with a disability or who has disability to be part of the management team or the board. That's a difficult question to ask an organization for. What we can measure, on the other hand, is the organization's policies around disability. The organization's policies around disability, including, for instance, the layout of the organization's premises. Do they have ramps, for instance? Do they have ramps so that people with disabilities can get into the office easily, can get to their desk, can work easily? Do they have ramps? Do they have other, like in the restrooms and do they have facilities for people who are people with disabilities? Do they have allotted parking spaces for them? Those are the things that we can measure. And because our analysis is for 154 companies, and hopefully next year even will be more, we will not be able to measure that because it means we will have to sit with each company and check their premises. And if we try to do that, we would not be able to finish our studies on time. So in other words, it's a very important metric. How we apply it, however, is when a company calls us to do an assessment for them in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we will look not only at the 4 that we have included, we will look at disability, we will look at other parameters as well, including religious diversity. And we'll look at all of those. Religious diversity we have not included in this study, and the simple reason again is religion is a private affair. Is a private affair. But in an organization, how we can see whether the organization is responsible in terms of religious diversity is, does your work, your style of working as an organization, does it allow for Muslims, for instance, to go and pray and come back to work? Or are you one of those organizations that will say, you know what, when you come here, we don't have any religion, stay here until 5 o'clock and you can go and do what you want to do. So those are some of the things that we will look at. But that assessment will be when we look at a particular organization, we can now give them advice on how they can improve diversity overall in terms of disability, religion, and all the rest. But when we do the assessment for the collective, we will not be looking at those because we're only looking at boards of directors and management teams.
Understood. Thanks for the response. It's quite interesting, and when you said that religion and physical abilities are quite private topics to broach with organizations, I do understand how that can be sensitive information. But then it's good to know that there's also ways to measure it, right? So I hope that answers the person's question. So to the next question, could you please talk us through the methodology used to determine the impact of diversity on performance seen on your slides earlier? Did you sample a number of companies in Nigeria? While diversity is important, I just thought it is difficult to measure the impact on performance with accuracy, hence my question.
So straightforward answer for that. So essentially what we did was that we looked at the financial performance of these companies and we were able to calculate their return on assets. Return on assets, of course, everybody in CFA knows how to calculate that, so I'm not going to go and say what it is. So we basically calculated their return on assets, and we were also able to compare that with their score on diversity, equity, and inclusion on the various parameters that we have measured. So we did a correlation analysis for that, and we checked to see if there was any correlation between the key parameters for performance. We looked at sales, we looked at sales growth, we looked at return on assets, and we also looked at profit after tax. And so we looked at those parameters and we compared those with the 4 parameters that we had for diversity, equity, and inclusion: gender diversity, ethnic diversity, educational diversity, age diversity. And what we found was a significant correlation between ethnic diversity and return on assets. So we determined return on assets by looking at their financials. We took these companies, all these companies had their financials in the public domain. So we basically calculated their return on assets, and we also did a correlation analysis, not just with return on assets, but other financial parameters as well against this. So we used SPSS, for those of us who know about SPSS, to run a correlation analysis to see what correlates with what. Now, I saw a question about causative, and unfortunately, I can't answer that question yet because we need to do some time series research to be able to answer that question. But probably in 10 years' time, I can say to you that ethnic diversity causes return on assets. See what we said. Ethnically diverse firms are more likely to have return on assets, higher return on assets. Does it mean that ethnic diversity produces a higher return on assets? We don't know. Does it mean that higher return on assets produces more ethnic diversity? We don't know, but there's a correlation. So maybe over time, we can test with companies to see if we improve the ethnic diversity, would it improve return on assets? And we will see over time if we do what they call a longitudinal study over time, and we can be able to tell that. So, but this is our second study so far. Perhaps in 10 years' time, we might be able to sample some companies and check to see, has ethnic diversity gone up? Has return on assets gone up? Please remember, economic cycles still exist. You are finance people, so you understand that even though we're improving ethnic diversity, it may not necessarily improve performance because we're going through a recession. So we cannot exactly say that. But what we see right now, 2021, 2022, we see that there's a correlation between ROA and ethnic diversity.
All right. In the interest of time, we've still got a few questions left, but in the interest of time, I'll just take one more question and then hand over to Rita. Part of the reason why women aren't in higher levels of management usually has to do with the sacrifice or break in their careers. They have to take due to motherhood. What other types of policies are you aware of outside of work from home policies which can assist women and firms with this particular issue?
So I was pleasantly surprised when I went to a potential client in Kenya, and for the first time in my life, I saw a lactating room on the African continent, lactating room. I'd never seen something like that before. A place designed for nursing mothers, to actually take their children to and lactate and breastfeed them. You can do that. You can have a creche on the premises, which in my opinion should be paid for by the organization, because that will now be the incentive to bring the child along to work. And we basically are almost replicating what our great-grandmothers had, because our great-grandmothers had our grandfathers and our fathers on their backs when they were working in the farm, when they were working in the farm and doing their housework. So basically, if we can't bring the work home, can we take home to the office? Can we make the office a home for these women, nursing mothers and all of that? So those are things that we can do. And again, if you have an easygoing culture, it will allow these things, because then you will be open to even considering the fact that we can dedicate space for children. And we don't mind having children run around downstairs, make noise. We can soundproof the room if we need to, and we can hire minders to help us mind the children, right? Your employees will be happy because they know that their children are downstairs, right? And when there's anything, if there's any issue at all, they will phone them to say, please, you need to come downstairs to attend to your child, and they will come downstairs. Or I'm just saying downstairs, it can be upstairs, it can be anywhere, and they can go and then attend to their children. So those are practical ways that you can get women back into the workforce. So practical ways to do that.
Thanks, okay. That's all the questions we can take this afternoon, and that's it from me. I've had a great time anchoring this session. Thanks everyone for joining. Rita, I'll be handing over to you now. Thanks.
Thank you, Jibola, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, okay. I mean, this discussion has been really insightful and shed a lot more light on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how it impacts performance in the general marketplace. And I think even in our personal workspaces as well. I mean, for me, one key takeaway is that we are all, that I got from this discussion, is that we're all part of creating diversity, equity, and inclusion where we are. And I hope that everyone here will leave this discussion being able to put some of the recommendations that OK has given us to use. Now, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is an area that the CFP Society in Nigeria is really passionate about, and we hope to continually engage the marketplace to bring about positive change. So on this note, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for attending. Thank you, Dr. Okechukwu Okere, for such a data-driven and very insightful presentation. Thank you for your recommendations and your insights, and for bringing everything to the fore. I'd like to say thank you to Jibola as well, our moderator, and for the team, the DEI events team, subcommittee that put this event together. Thank you so much. I can't leave without saying thank you to Yemi Ajagun and the entire CFA Society office, Gloria and Oyinola, for all their support in helping us put this together. So, I mean, this is just one of the first conversations that the CFA Society in Nigeria is going to be having around DEI. We intend to have a lot more events about that this year, and we hope that everyone will join. So we hope to be pushing a lot more out this year, and we hope everyone will join. And thank you. So say thank you to everyone, and have a great weekend. Have a great day. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rita. Looking forward to connecting with everybody. Please find me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to continue the conversation and answer any other questions you might have.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Okere. And thank you everyone for joining.
We are professionals. We We are impact-driven. We are CFA Society Nigeria, a member society of the CFA Institute Global Network of Societies. Our mission is to the highest standard of practice in the Nigerian financial services industry and provide a vibrant community for our members. The CFA Charter signals the holders' commitment to professional excellence. As thought leaders, we collaborate with stakeholders to ensure adherence to ethical standards, better education for professionals, and to build market integrity. We are the leading voice for advocacy in the finance and investment industry in Nigeria. To partner with us or become our member, visit us at cfasocietyn.org for more details. CFA Society Nigeria, making finance a